You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.
All right, good morning, LA. Happy Thursday. I'm so excited to be here. I always am. I'm your host, Katerina Cozias, and you are tuning in for another episode of the radio talk show, TV show, web series. We are streaming on so many platforms that we don't even know how many people are watching and from where. But LA40 is our episode today, and we are delving into some amazing things as always. We're going to be talking today about miraculous living. That's right, because, let's be honest, we are all here for a finite amount of time. And some days it feels like there's not enough time. Other days it feels like there's so much time. The point, though, is I think that I'm a big believer of the fact that we are here to enjoy life, right? I really am not a big believer in struggle and thinking that it has to be hard, that it has to be difficult, that it has to be stressful. Although I'll be the first one to admit there are times and days where I'm absolutely feeling all of that negative, anxious energy. But we're going to switch that energy and talk about how we can get ourselves into a place where we're vibing high, we're energetic, we're feeling great. And to that end, we have a fantastic guest with us today, Ms. Wendy Darling, who I am going to introduce more formally in just a minute. A couple of quick things before we get there, a little bit of housekeeping, if you will. If you're not following us across all our social media platforms, please do that. At LA Talk Radio, we have so many amazing shows here, so many amazing hosts, that there is something for everyone. So please follow LA Talk Radio across all of our social media platforms. Also, of course, little plug for self. Please follow Katerina Cozias. I make it easy for you. It's at Katerina Cozias, also across all social media platforms. And before we get going, big shout out to our official sponsors, All Green Funding. That's right, All Green Funding, for those of you who caught the show a few weeks ago, is a business funding firm. They get capital. They find money for pre-startups all the way up to Fortune 500 companies. If you're looking for money, get the green your business needs to grow. And you can do so by tapping into a special link that we're providing as a friend of Katerina's and the show. It's allgreenfunding.com/Katerina. allgreenfunding.com/Katerina. If you're in business and you're looking for financing, please go ahead and use that link, because it's going to get you a non-obligatory consultation. And as a friend of mine, you'll get some preferential treatment. So make sure to check them out. But we're going to get into the show here now, because, as I mentioned, we have a very terrific guest with us today. She is dialing in from Carlsbad, Southern California, San Diego area, and she is a transformational coach, an author, best-selling author, and also a speaker, as I mentioned, Wendy Darling. And she's going to talk to us about the miraculous living method. How can we move ourselves to a place where life is good, life is flowing, life is moving in our favor? So let's get her on the line. Wendy, are you with us?
I am. Good morning.
Good morning. Fantastic. A happy morning to you.
Thank you.
So, Wendy, I am so excited to have you on the show, because what you do is you assist people, you help free them from things that are holding them back in order to get them to live their best possible life in all areas. And that's not always an easy thing. So what I'd love for you to do is talk to us a little bit about the importance of working with a coach such as yourself, and how you can work with people. Because one of the things that I see, and you'll probably agree with me, but in tying in with the demographic of the show, sometimes the older we get, we start to place limiting beliefs on ourselves with respect to what we think we can do. It's too late, I'm too old, it's never going to happen, it should have happened by now. How do you work with someone to get them over some of those limiting beliefs?
Oh, there's a lot of questions in that.
I've asked you 5, so go nuts.
Well, first of all, I do not believe it's ever too late for anything. And yes, I think all of us have had life experiences that have created an internal environment in our minds, in our hearts, and even from my perspective, that also could be in your energy system that has you live a life of limitation. And the good news is people like me have found ways to find that interference internally and to be able to shift it, to really open you up, to live from your heart, to live more authentically. Because if there's something that you desire, I actually believe it's your truth. And it's just a matter of opening yourself up to receive it. It doesn't mean you sit at home and wait. This is showing my age. When I was very young, there was a TV show called The Millionaire, and there would be an anonymous delivery person that would submit a check for $1 million to a family, and it was that story. And so it's not like you can sit at home and the love of your life will show up. Of course, in some ways, it can happen with all of our online dating opportunities or social media, but you still have to get out of the house at some point. And I also believe that a lot of times in life, there are no, in my world, bad experiences, although I could easily say I've had a few, to say the least. Everything leads us more in the direction of our truth. And if you look at your life and start connecting the dots, even the challenging times are simply opportunities to kind of shift your trajectory a little bit, or in some cases, a lot.
And I love that you mentioned that, because you had something happen to you that shifted your trajectory. So I'd love to help share that with our viewers, because it's a very interesting story. I think it was 1991. You were in a bad accident, and you received.
It was actually 1990, but I'm impressed that you were really close.
I like to be thorough. Tell us a little bit about what happened to you, Wendy.
Yeah, I was at that time a management and organizational development consultant, and I still do that work today, a little bit differently. But I was a very traditional consultant, and I was flying to different places, working with companies, and I was on my way to LA, interestingly enough, given that you're in LA, from Texas. And I was at the Dallas-Fort Worth airport. I was really, really sick. And back then, I was more of a type A person that no matter what, the show must go on, you show up. Mm-hmm. And so I went outside the airport to get some fresh air before my flight left. And I ended up passing out, fell over a ledge, and I fell about a little over 25 feet.
Oh, my God.
And I ended up shattering my right leg, because I obviously landed on my right leg. And I bounced and also fractured my back. It wasn't about 11 months and multiple surgeries before I knew if I would ever walk again, which I do. In around the fourth week of being in the hospital, my former husband came with a couple suitcases packed, saying he no longer wanted to be married any longer. And even though we had issues and there were reasons, the timing just was kind of sucky. And then ultimately, then I was also diagnosed with a traumatic brain injury that took many years to recover from. But the real blow actually was when we went to court. My former husband was awarded full custody of our son. And that's when I broke in a million pieces. And so my whole life was like a whiteboard. There was nothing on it. Everything that I could have said, this is me, this is my identity as a mom, as a wife, as a consultant. My body was also really challenged. So my physicality, we could keep going with that. Mm-hmm. And so I remember even in those early days and weeks, there was just this question of what choices had I made that got me to where I was, and what needed to happen to take me in a different direction and dig out of this big giant hole that I found myself in.
Now, you found yourself, I'm just going to interrupt you just for just one moment. Mm-hmm. You found yourself in that hole. How angry with self were you, or were you?
You know, I think there were so many emotions. I was confused. I was sad. I was really, really sad. I think the confusion was, how did all of this happen to somebody like me? And so the anger itself, quite honestly, didn't come about for a while. I was in grief way more than I was anger. And but as I started to get healthier, the anger started coming up, because a lot of times sadness is anger turned inward. Mm-hmm. So I have a couple of graduate degrees in counseling psychology and postgraduate work in management and organizational development. But we learn that a lot of times when somebody starts getting angry, when they're recovering from something, it's actually a healthy sign that I'm talking about raging or whatever. It's a healthy sign that, hey, wait, I'm ready to step into life again, and we got to do this differently. So yeah, of course I was kicking myself particularly with what happened to my son. My whole accident was very disturbing, to say the least, very traumatic for me, and the business with my son just really took me over the edge. But it also was the beginning of what I now can express as an extraordinary life. So I really started to dig. I started to dig internally. My mom was the one who suggested maybe I might want to learn how to meditate. At that time, quieting my mind was a complete oxymoron. And so, to cut to the chase, during this period of time of learning how to meditate, I did begin to receive and cultivate my healing gifts and my processes, my transformational processes that I use with my clients today to help free them of the internal barriers that exist, that are interfering in you living your authentic and, what I believe, your miraculous life. Because I believe each and every one of us has something very special to offer, and I believe we're also here on earth to enjoy it. And so I help people turn their dreams into reality, in essence, in part so they're nourished and they're happy, but also when we're really happy, it's so much easier to have even greater impact in our lives. So yeah, I'm very blessed that I've helped people. As you know, I help people with their businesses and their careers. I help people who have gone from corporate to wanting to start their own business. I help people I've been blessed that I've helped people with learning disabilities and challenges, as well as attracting love and even releasing some weight.
Right.
So I've had a lot of fun. And then my corporate work, I still work with executives and their teams to really strengthen what I call the RQ within the organization, the relationship quotient, because I believe that the genius exists in the special recipe within each organization or each team. And my job is to help pull that out and assimilate it in a way that organizations can be more productive and profitable.
I was going to say,
people are enjoying
being at work. Right? Yes, and we had a special guest on whom we both know a few months ago, Adam Markell, and Adam came to the table with a very interesting stat, which I actually, very honestly, expected it to be higher. But he came to the table and said that 58% of people polled last year are unhappy in their work environment. And I just think that's so tragic, to get up spend your time, spend your energy, spend your precious days being in an environment where you're not happy. Talk to me a little bit about why, in your opinion, people allow themselves to remain, maybe misaligned is the right word.
Yeah, it's actually, it depends on each person, but I'll speak in very general terms. First of all, some people don't know that there can be a choice. Some people feel stuck and they don't know what else they could do. Some people just have a fear of making a change, not knowing. It's kind of like, well, at least I know what my life looks like. I know that at least I'm getting that paycheck. So the familiar gets to be a place of discomfort, comfort.
and it's funny because I was watching something the other day, to your point. I think it was Tony Robbins that talks about the six needs that every human being has. He's got it pegged down to 6, and one of them is the need for certainty, and the other one on the flip side is the need for uncertainty. But most people tend to fall into that place of certainty, and I suppose getting that paycheck, going to that job, it satisfies that need for a lot of people, and they're not willing to move away from that. But what my question to them, if they are unhappy, if they're happy, fantastic. But if they're unhappy, at what cost are you so diligently hanging on to that perceived certainty? Because I think at the end of the day, it is perceived, especially when you're working for a corporation that can turn around and say to you, we're downsizing, I'm sorry, here's your package, right? So
that's right. The reality is there's no guarantees in life, period. In anything that we want to examine. There's no guarantee. I'm hoping that I'll be here tomorrow.
I'm hoping someone sends me $1 million.
Yeah, okay, that too. But there's just no guarantees. In relationships, we're constantly growing and evolving, and sometimes there really is shelf life, both in a relationship as well as a job. And in both cases, I believe what we're not really taught in life, but some of us do speak about it, there are signs of completion.
Such as? What does that mean?
So let's say for the job, you loved it at first, but now you're starting to feel restless. I'm working with a client right now who's she's an executive. She oversees 250 engineers, and she's starting to feel antsy. And instead of saying, I'm going to buckle down and I'm going to stick with it, we started to examine what might be next. And I'm not a big believer in bungee jumping, although I kind of did without a cord many years ago. And so I help people kind of create a strategy. So there was a woman that worked for one of the major networks, and she was wanting to explore starting her own business. And so when we sat down together, we were able to create a plan to allow her to do that, including her financials and everything, how she was going to do that. And I have a brand new client who just left her job just last Friday.
Oh, wow.
And creating a plan for how she's taking some time off. She has the finances to do that. And it's really important that she's going to nourish herself now because her job was her life. And she no longer wants her job to be her life. She wants her job and her career to be a portion of her life, because one of the things that she's wanting now is also to attract love into her life. So she's in a whole new redesign process, which is absolutely awesome.
How much of that, Wendy, sorry to interrupt you, how much of that has to do with opening up her energy for some more self-love?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I don't think she would have made that decision had she, because her decision was an act of love. She recognized that if she stayed in the environment where she was working, it was going to be compromising a lot more than just her time. It, eventually, because she was stressed out a lot, long work hours, and she just thought something within her was going to give. And that's the other thing. When we have too much stress in our lives, it impacts our health. And let's face it, if we don't have good health, it doesn't matter if you have 50 million in the bank. So I think a lot of people, to get back to your point, stay put because they're not sure what might be next. And what I do with people is I help to open up that design process, and we design from your heart. What is it that you truly want? And even for people that are listening right now, if you just would take a step back and imagine if you could wave your magic wand, and I'm encouraging you even to put your hand over your heart while you do this and take a breath, what would you like your life to look like?
But may I ask you a question? Because we hear this, right? Script it out, write your vision, draw it out. And I know in talking with some people, and myself included sometimes, it sounds so fairy tale. Like, okay, I have this vision for my life, but then the little voice comes back in that says, yeah, you can't get there. How are you expected to do that? And so I suppose my question is, you can have a vision for your life, but how do you move towards it? How do you give yourself that permission? I suppose that's what working with someone like you helps with.
Yeah, and it's one step at a time. Again, I don't believe in the bungee jumping approach to life. Even though I do believe in life's gifts and miracles, I really find it to be very important to be willing to take a step. And I think what people hold back is taking a step, even to just explore. You don't have to make a final commitment, but explore what it might be. Because, for example, in the woman that I mentioned just a little while ago that just left her job last week, she realized she was living the life that her parents wanted for her. And that happens to a lot of us. It was true for me as well. I really looked at, how did this accident, quote unquote, happen? What kind of choices were I making? And for a while, I was offering more personal growth seminars. It was probably as much for me as it was for the people I was offering it to. And now, I do my work with companies, but I even take a little different slant in my approach with companies. I've always been a team player. I've always looked at pulling out the genius within the organization. But I think what happens is, again, people are afraid to express themselves and just take a step. If you look at the Indiana Jones movie from many moons ago with Harrison Ford, there was a place in the movie where he had to cross this huge canyon, but there was nothing.
Right. I remember that
no
scene.
Bridge.
Yes.
Do you remember?
Yes, I do, yeah.
And so he took a step in faith, and lo and behold, a stone met his foot. Now, that's how it feels to a lot of people. A lot of people feel that they're stepping off into nothing.
Right.
But the reality is there's always something there.
I had the opportunity, to your point, I had the opportunity about a year ago to interview Marianne Williamson. And she had just come out with her new book. So I sat down with her, and one of the words that she used very much to complement what you're saying was the word pronoia. And I had never heard that word. I said to her, pronoia? She said, yes. She said, it's the opposite of paranoia. When you're paranoid, you think everything is working against you. When you're in pronoia, you expect that the universe is going to raise to provide you with what you need. And I just thought that was so lovely, because that's exactly what you're saying now, right?
Yeah, and where my work distinguishes from a lot of other transformational experts is that I have a system that, first of all, can immediately find the internal interference. And there's more to it. There's 5 critical pieces within the system, but one of those other areas that is very distinguished from many other practitioners is there is brain training. Because if you do not deal with the workings of your mind, just as you were saying, that just wants to say, whoa, we can't do that. What the heck are you thinking? Or, that's whatever those limiting thoughts are. And it's simply your ego and the parts of you that want to keep you safe. There's a re-education process that has to occur so that now you're coming from a place of abundance and prosperity and possibility instead of lack and limitation.
Is that trainable, or are some people just such downers? They're sort of half-glass empty people. Can that be learned?
Oh, you bet. Absolutely.
Good. I hope so.
Absolutely.
That's encouraging.
Yeah, absolutely it can be. I pulled myself out from the ashes. I've witnessed and have been a part of phenomenal transformations for people where they're suddenly living a life that they formerly could only dream of. And, I see people attracting love. I see people, I've experienced working with people that have doubled and tripled their income. I could just keep listing so many different things. And
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, and so absolutely, it's always possible. And just like what you said in the beginning, it is never too late.
Yes,
ever.
I think it's never too late for career change. It's never too late for wealth creation. It's never too late for love. On these notes, for our listeners, for our audience, for the viewer at home, what are some things that people can do now, some steps they can take in their own life to start their day that will help to shift, as you said, and train their brain? Any tips for us today?
Yeah, I can give you a couple because so first of all, as I mentioned, I would encourage you to literally design the life that you want.
Pen and paper design?
What?
Like with a pen and paper?
Yeah.
Like literally just...
magic wand time. Don't just make it a head exercise. And look at the different, areas of your life in terms of where you're living, to the kind of career you want, the relationship,
maybe
friends
your health,
and family,
right?
community, those kinds of things. Health, yes. Spirituality. And so, for example, I in my design, I created living in a place that I have a beautiful view of the ocean. Well, 4.5 years ago, I moved from Dallas, Texas, and I'm now living in Carlsbad, California. I have a beautiful view from my home of the hills. I don't yet have that view from the ocean, although my view's really beautiful. I never knew I'd love the hills as much as I do. And but I will say I'm a heck of a lot closer to the ocean. I'm like 5 minutes away than I was 4.5 years ago. So I haven't quite fulfilled that, and I'm not attached to it as much as I was before. It's kind of in the it might be nice category. But when you start to wake up the desires of your heart, so it's not to be just a mental exercise. Really wake up what you really, really desire. I have a very strong belief that our desires are in our hearts because I believe God's placed them there. And that's kind of like our carrot dangling in front of us, encouraging us to grow and evolve and to contribute. And that's why so many people either still have this restless feeling within themselves, or what also happens is they've had this desire, but it hasn't been fulfilled, so they become sad and discouraged and complacent. And that's in part where I come in, because I can help remove all that interference of false beliefs and help really free you to be living a life truer to who you really are.
I love that so much, Wendy, because it's so very important. And like we said at the top of the hour, life goes by so quickly. And I know for me, one of my big drivers has been to do everything I can do in my power to reach the ripe old age of 90 or 95 or 100. You know, knock on wood, I don't get hit by a bus on the way home later. But if I can make it to that age, I really want to be able to look myself in the mirror and have that integrity to self and say, I really did my best to live into my truth, rather than I have so many regrets. You know, I think that's tragic. And so part of what we want to do with the show, and part of what we do with our viewers, is just really try and help ignite that, because I think it's so very important. And I also think the more of us who are living at a place where we're content most of the time, it just raises the collective consciousness of all of us, and it leads to a more joyous experience. And why not offer that to each other, right?
Absolutely. And, you know, that goes to another something that I can recommend. I practice all of this myself. I obviously do my own methodology every day, my own process. But to have a practice of gratitude, I think it's really important to, you know, I keep a journal. I write in it almost every day. And where I begin is I'm always expressing how I am forever grateful for fill in the blank. And one of the things that's so important in opening up and moving forward is also to be accepting of everything in your life right now.
Difficult for some people, because some people are living into a place where it's not that shiny at the moment.
No, and that's my point. You can always find something. There were days that I went, I am grateful that I woke up. I am grateful that I am still breathing. I'm grateful that I have the opportunity to take another step. You know, there are days I'm grateful that I have a roof over my head, or somebody's roof over my head.
Right.
You know, so you can always find something. And there, I mean, I as you might imagine, there was a period of time way back then. I was a very sad person. And I really felt defeated in many, many ways. And I had never, ever felt that before. I was one of those kind of unstoppable, fearless people. And I just always thought, oh, yeah, I can do that. And so I really understand that if somebody is feeling like, oh, my gosh, how much more can I handle? Well, the good news is you probably can. And the other thing that's so important is if you are in a place of confusion, if you are in a place of wanting life to be better, or if your life's okay and you just know that there's more that you want to be doing and experiencing, you know, none of us are meant to live on the top of mountains isolated. You need to reach out for help and support. And whether it be somebody like myself, whether it makes sure that you have a pal that you can talk with. You know, I got through those times because I had friends that were my earth angels, and
like
that really were there for me, and, you know, kept me above ground
right.
in those really challenging times.
Absolutely. Wendy,
So,
if somebody wants to work with you, how can they find you? How can we reach out to you?
Oh, it's very easy. You can go to my website, which is wendydarling.com, or you can even feel free to email me, and my email address is wendy at wendydarling.com.
Perfect. Yeah, I like that you make it easy for people, Wendy. You are such a blessing. You and I have had the chance to work together, and that was one reason I invited you onto the show, because I have experienced firsthand some of the work that you do. I was lucky enough to have been introduced to you by a mutual friend a few months back now, and I will say graciously here on air that for anyone that is looking for a little bit of support, regardless of what area you're looking for it in, Wendy is such a gentle soul and very, very knowledgeable in her field and her line of work. And so I thank you, Wendy, for taking the time to be on the program with us today, because I genuinely recognize the importance of celebrating your wins, the importance of working with other people, and many times, often we need someone to help shine a light on all of our light. And when we need that, we can reach out to people, and it is absolutely offered. And again, collectively, we raise the energy level of all of us for such a more beautiful experience. So thank you for taking the time to be with us today. It's very much appreciated.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And the other thing that I want to just say is change does not have to be challenging. That is a limited belief in itself. The gift that I was given allows for the ease and the gentleness of, really moving forward. And I love that piece because, I think that's the other thing that keeps people where they are. They're afraid it's going to be difficult or challenging. And I feel very grateful that what I do is not.
And I like that you have moved from a place of recognizing what you had gone through as a gift. And I think that's an important piece for people to leave with, is if you're finding yourself struggling or in a challenging place, look for the benefits that it could be offering you. For as hokey as it may sound, look for the lesson and see what you can cultivate from it. Take the black frame that you might have placed around it and just shift it perception-wise to a pink frame. And just that subtle mental shift may open up a whole wealth of insight that you may not have been recognizing. So big believer in that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. As I mentioned earlier, we sometimes have experiences. It's kind of like, how when children are learning how to bowl, you have the bumper stoppers in the lanes so that the balls don't go into the gutter. So it keeps the ball headed down the alley. Well, sometimes our experiences, and especially those challenging ones, are kind of like hitting that bumper, and it just redirects us a little bit. You don't have to go in the gutter. We're trying to keep you in your lane of where you need to be going. And when you can look at those experiences, when I've had people even be released from their jobs and they come to work with me, there's a part within me, and I've seen it over and over again, where I'm like, woohoo, I wonder what they really want to be doing that they haven't given themselves permission. And so the gift of being released from their job has now positioned them to get really honest about that, which is great. So yeah, the reason I share with people about my accident is because I don't want you to go through something traumatic. It has been said by more than one person, when we get a little off in our course of direction of where would be best for us, we'll get a little nudge or we'll get a little kick. And then if we don't pay attention, then we get a little bonk. And then for people like me who clearly didn't get it, I don't even know how to describe it.
Well, the universe made you wake up and listen. God, light source, whatever we want to call it, dropping 25 feet is a wake-up call, to say the least, right?
Yeah, to say the least. And so that's why even sharing that I now have the ability to transform people's lives. I actually see energy today. I'm able to work with it. I can see where it's stuck within you, whether it be your mind, your heart, or your energy field. And I tell people that not because I didn't feel comfortable when I started, when this started happening to me. In fact, you know, it was like, oh my gosh, what is happening to me? And I was very much in the closet about it for a while. But I share about it because I think we all have gifts. And a lot of times, because there are gifts, we don't recognize how awesome they really are. And a lot of times we don't know that they're gifts. We just think everybody's like that. I had some instances myself that I didn't realize until somebody pointed it out to me years ago. And I think that what's really important is to look at how are you denying us of some of your personal gold. And if you don't know what your gifts are, talk to your friends, talk to possibly your family. Sometimes family's not the best at sharing gifts, but maybe they will be. And to really look at what's special about you. Because a lot of times we are shy about things that we think we are good at or feel we know about. But many of us, I put myself formerly into that category, are very shy or modest. I'm still pretty modest, but I think it's a critical piece to celebrate who you are. You know, don't deny us. I can remember years ago having a speaking engagement at a university, and saying this for the first time, because these were people that are, and a lot of us are really good at giving. We're really good at supporting people. I bet that in a heartbeat, Katerina, if you had a friend in need, you would be there in a heartbeat.
Absolutely.
And right. So the good news is you have those skills. And I'm not just speaking directly to Katerina in this moment. So the good news is you have the skills to assist other people. Well, now you need to turn the table and allow others to support you as well. You need to learn how to be that friend to yourself so that you also open up to let others support you in life as well as the universe.
And I think that's where some people get stuck, because I agree with you. A lot of people have difficulty receiving. They have no issues with giving, but they do have issues with receiving or asking for help, asking for support. And I think that's a stigma that is placed on us even as young kids, right? And especially on males, of like, be strong, tough it out, you can do it, don't cry. But it's not a sign of weakness. It's a sign of, I'm growing and I could use a little bit of support. And I think if more people were willing to take that from each other, again, what a wonderful place this would be. There was a song like that once, wasn't there? What a wonderful world or something? I don't know.
Yeah.
But
what
absolutely.
a wonderful world it would be.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that also is really important. You know, men and women. Women were, you know, especially women of my age. I'm a lot older than you. I'm 66. Oh, I said that.
Oh, you look so great.
I'm
Wendy.
only yeah, I'm totally okay with my age. And so women also were conditioned to be givers. And a lot of things that I do with women today is helping them to open up to, first of all, be more authentically feminine, still being powerful, still being able to be in your career or business or whatever it is, but also being feminine, in which I hesitate to use the word feminine because it has a lot of meaning.
I was going to say, describe that. Describe
authentic.
what you mean. Okay. Because, there's this whole masculine versus feminine, and a lot of women that aren't tapping into their feminine as much. We are right at the top of our hour, but give me one tip for any women that are watching, how they can move in 2018 a little more fully into their feminine. What can women do to live that?
The first thing I think of, there are two things that I'll say just very briefly. First of all, what can you do to nourish yourself and nurture yourself? What does that look like? To really take time out for you.
Regardless of gender, this one. Yes.
Yeah, and to go have some fun. I think a lot of people are lacking in the fun category. I recommend that you go on what I call fairy godmother adventures, where you just get in your car, or if you choose your bicycle or possibly walking, and just see where your heart wants you to go. I've done this so many times when I just feel I need to clear the airwaves out. And I end up, I basically ask my internal fairy godmother to guide me to have a new adventure. I have found extraordinary restaurants. I have found great places to explore. And sometimes I haven't found anything, but I just kind of got out and had a little adventure, and it was fine.
I love
And
this.
what I also like about it is it helps to really dial up the part of you that's highly intuitive and guides you.
And we all have a guide. Wendy, I'm going to guide us to the end of the program. Unfortunately, we could keep talking forever. But a big thank you to you. Again, for anyone that is interested in having a more in-depth discussion with Wendy, you can reach her at wendydarling.com, or just jump over to her website, wendydarling.com. Miss Darling, you're a darling, and I thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I enjoyed every moment. Thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Take care, and big kiss to you, Wendy. Thank you. Terrific. All right. So, such great information. I struggle sometimes because a lot of it sounds fluffy, right? And I know there's a lot of us out there, myself included, who are very analytical, very A-type, very structured, and by the lists and by the book. But the more I myself, and I'm inviting you to do this at home as well, this exercise that Wendy mentioned about tapping into your intuition, about listening to what is calling at your heart, is so very important. So let's infuse a little bit more fun into our lives, into our days, because it's supposed to be fun and joyous, and collectively we can offer each other the gifts that we are given. If we can cultivate those for each other, what a wonderful world this would be, right? I'm Katerina Cozias. You're watching LA40. Thank you to our sponsor, All Green Funding, for your funding needs. We will see you again next week. Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
You're listening to LA40 with Katerina Cozias, only on LA Talk Radio.